We talked about how to heal physically from disease, and I'm going off a total whim here to do something that I normally wouldn't do. We're going to talk about how to heal from disease spiritually now. This is very dear to my heart, and over the next hour and 20 minutes, we're going to be talking about this. It might not be for everybody, so don't feel badly if you have to get up and go out. I totally get that. But this is a very powerful presentation that I'm going to share with you today, and I feel it could be extremely life transformative. So here we go. First thing I want to talk about is the placebo effect. What is the placebo effect? As soon as someone takes a pill that doesn't have any active ingredients in it, and they take this pill and they believe they're going to heal from something, they heal from it, and it's just filled with sugar. Based on belief, they just healed their ailment. And this is such a powerful tool that they have gone as far as testing knee surgeries. There was a sports knee surgeon that was the best in his industry. And what he did was he had an 80% success rate in healing people's knees with this surgery. So he agreed to do this placebo test where he took half the people and gave them the knee surgery and took the other half of the people and gave them the fake knee surgery. The people saw a TV screen of their knee actually being cut open and doing the entire surgery, but all he really did was make a slit and sew it back up, and he didn't do anything more. 80% of the people's knees healed. So the knee surgery was useless, and he had to quit his profession because it had the same results on the placebo. The danger about the placebo is that it can also work against you. For example, if you were to go to the hospital and they tell you that you have 6 months to live and you're going to die, most people go into panic attack, go to chemo, and what usually happens? They die in perfectly 6 months. Or, for example, this can even be worse in some cases, someone goes and gets their blood tested, and their thyroid numbers are off, and then all of a sudden they say, I have a thyroid issue, and then this becomes their condition. Oh, this is why I'm overweight. Oh, this is it. This is perfect. And so now, this person has this new degenerative disease based on belief because they got these numbers on a piece of paper. Let's look at Tony Robbins real quick. Tony Robbins. We all know who Tony Robbins is. He's like big time. In his early 20s, he ended up with a tumor in his brain and he had cancer. It was on his pituitary gland. And it was on his pituitary gland. He had unregulated growth. That's why he's so big. He went to the doctor, and guess what the doctor said? You know what? It's not looking good. We're going to have to do surgery on you, and it's just not looking good. What did Tony Robbins do? He said, no! I do not accept this. He got 100 different doctors' opinions. 30 years later, he is sitting there with that tumor in his brain and supposedly has cancer. Does this look like a man who has cancer? No. The boy who's here, I forgot his name, they told him he had 6 months to live, and now he doesn't even have cancer anymore. It is an spiritual attack on our lives when something like this happens, and we cannot let it in. So, real quickly, why does the placebo work? Science doesn't even know. This is what they've come up with. Why does the placebo work? Okay, you're in a flight or fright state, and when you do the placebo, you go from a flight or fright state to a relaxed state. Therefore, you heal. Okay, so let's say you're in this flight or fright state, and all of a sudden there's more adrenaline and toxicity in the human body causing all sorts of havoc. There's lots of people in flight or fright that don't have diseases. And why is it someone who has 3 ailments and they take one placebo pill, puts them in a relaxed state, it only heals the one thing? It doesn't make sense. If there was less toxicity in the human body from being in not a flight or fright state, then all of a sudden they would heal from everything. There is a reality that is as real as this physical reality that cannot be seen with the human eye. And what is going down is on a spiritual level. And what we're going to do over the next hour is firstly talk about the how to eliminate this. And then towards the end, we're going to kind of dive into where we actually get more sight in this realm that is you can't see. So here we go. One of the number one things that we can do for healing spiritually and for spiritual growth is doing some focus work. Focus work. Well, what is this? Well, firstly, many of us have many issues. For example, maybe we're in a bad relationship, maybe we're being cheated on, or maybe we're being treated poorly. Or maybe we have a family member or friend who is always walking all over our boundaries and taking advantage of us. Maybe, for example, they come over to our house without asking, and they just walk right in the door. And they sit on our couch without asking, and then they start eating food without asking, and it doesn't feel too good. Or maybe you're sitting there and you are worried about your weight, and you're always suffering, oh, I'm too skinny, or I'm too overweight. Or maybe you were physically abused or mentally abused. Regardless of what it is, many of us have a lot of garbage. This is spiritual garbage, and we don't want to face it or look at it because it's painful. If you want to get rid of that stuff, guess what? You got to face it. And this is not a physical pain. This is a pain it's even worse in most cases. It's a spiritual pain that you feel. You're in suffering and misery. What happens is we go to work. We work all day. We come home. What's the first thing we do? We go to the TV or Facebook and scroll for 5 hours. In this other reality, so we don't have to look over here. And this ow is the root of the disease that we might have let in because the doctor told us. Okay, so what we got to do is take our focus and attention, which is our greatest spiritual weapon, and go to work here. Let me give you an example. Many of us have done this. I'm sure you've been in this situation. You're all by yourself, driving your car all alone, and nobody is around but you, and you're just sitting there, and you're like, oh, this sucks. Life sucks. You're just sulking and sulking and sulking. And what is happening right now is you're looping in your brain what you can do to fix this ow. Thoughts aren't going to help you here, guys. There's no logical thing that's going to take the suffering and misery away. Suffering and misery is not a logical thing. It's a feeling that is ow. So what we need to do is take our focus and attention and identify the ow in our reality. And then once you identify it, oh, there it is, we've got to do the spiritual work and figure out how to eliminate it and get it out. And this is what we have to figure out. Maybe you've got to be staring it down directly at it after you identify it with resistance like, I'm on a mission to get you the heck out of here. Maybe you're supposed to look at it but not look at it. Maybe you're supposed to connect it to I don't know, but we got to be trying everything we can do in order to do this. It's almost like a chessboard game. There's so many spiritual frequencies and things going on all the time that we've kind of got to figure out what works with what. And our focus work is our greatest spiritual weapon we have. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this in a second, but we all know healing happens. For example, many of us have been in a relationship and we got dumped. And it was extremely painful. Why is it that some people heal from a broken heart faster than others? Well, if we do the focus work and play this chessboard game and kind of like do this and figure it out, it can happen very quickly. You can heal in 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, 5 decades, 5 lifetimes, you name it. So let's go back to how we do this. So we're sitting here. We want to get this stuff out. we have 5 senses. We've got smell, taste, touch, hearing, and sight. We are the ones in the middle of it all, experiencing it all. And we experience more than that also. So we're the ones experiencing everything. If we focus, we can feel our entire reality. And then we can identify the ow. And once we identify the ow, we've got to find a way to get it out. Maybe you have to say, no, I don't accept that. Get out. We have to try everything. The stare down method. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into this in a second. But there's another thing I think we should talk about, and this is that boundary issue. Why do we allow people to walk all over our boundaries? Why do we allow people to take advantage of us? What are we scared of? Can I actually say no to somebody? What will they think? Maybe they'll think I'm a bad person. Or maybe they'll tell somebody else how bad of a person I am. I'm telling you right now, 10 out of 10 times, this never happens. Because they know that they are unrightfully taking advantage of you. So what are we scared of? Well, generally it's a feeling. I'll give you an example. Let's say you are sitting there and this friend comes over, one of these people who walks over your boundaries, and they ask you to borrow something. But they're not really asking you to borrow something. They're asking with their words, but they're ready to take it without any regard with what you have to say or think. And it feels like that there's this one foot in your reality, and it's just like, ow, 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 this is sitting in there, and you're just like, oh, this sucks. And you're just like, get it out, go, take this thing. I don't want to deal with this anymore, leave it. This feeling you're feeling right now that you're allowing them to take your stuff or whatever you're allowing, this ow is your energy being drained. And this is no good because they're just going to use it for bad and not good, or they're just going to blow it. So what we got to do, it's hard, this focus work. And as soon as this situation happens, you got to like stand. And then there's this whole, it's almost like feels like a battle. It's intense. The anticipation could be even crazy, even though it could just be like 6 seconds or 10 seconds. It feels eternal because you're in this spiritual, and you say you want to experience more spiritual energy. Spiritual energy is both the good and the bad. So we got to learn how to do this type of thing. And then you say no. And then at first they might be like testing you. No, I've never heard them say no before. No. And then you say, no, this is my stuff. I don't want you eating my food or whatever. No. And then what happens every single time if you stand your ground? They're like, they become bashful, as if they got caught red-handed because they are unrightfully doing this. And I understand that some people are like, oh man, this is my brother that does this, or my dad even, or my mom. What do I do here? We want to give and help people, but we don't want them to be taking our energy and stuff like this. So a more gentle approach of what we could do is be like, you know what? This doesn't really feel good to me. Please, this hurts. But this is okay, and this is okay, and this is okay, but this is not okay, and this is not okay. It's almost like setting your boundaries, and it's critical. So the thing I love about the 100% raw food diet, or any improved diet for whatever, is if you do this, the focus work is automatic. The focus work is automatic. Why is this? Well, generally, when someone has a spiritual issue, sometimes they go on a fast, and they get more focus, and they deal with this spiritual issue. And once they deal with the spiritual issue, guess what happens? They come off of the fast, and they continue to eat what they want to eat. But when you're on a raw food diet or a whole foods diet, this is a lifelong fast. You've made permanent improvements. And if you don't do this focus work, you're a sitting duck. All of a sudden, those cravings come in, and the desire for pizza comes. There is no pizza around, but you smell and taste pizza. You're salivating. There is nothing you can eat on your current diet. You can stuff your stuff up to here, but it doesn't quench that desire for pizza. If you don't do focus now, you're a sitting duck. But if you do the focus work, okay, let's feel my reality here. We're looking. Oh, wait a minute. This feeling of starvation is literally just my stomach shrinking. Wow, that's a trip. I always thought that was suffering and I needed to eat and I'm always hungry. And I noticed that there's this extra energy with that sensation. I could get used to this. And this is such a trip. My salivary glands are drooling right now and there's no pizza around. I smell pizza. This is a trip. And then while all this is going on at the same time, all of a sudden these emotional issues that we're covering up with food comes right in your face here. And if we're not doing the focus work, we're a sitting duck. So how do we do this? Let's go a little bit deeper. We have our five senses. We are the ones in the middle experiencing everything. The first thing we need to do is identify the ow, the suffering and misery. And then we've got, you know what? Let's talk about how to heal from a physical degenerative disease with this focus work. Let's say that you have colon cancer or breast cancer or an ulcer. And generally, when you feel the pains in your colon or you feel the pains elsewhere in your stomach or whatever the issue is, and it hurts physically, and it puts us in this freaked out mode. And then we're lying in bed, tossing and turning, that ugly feeling, and we're looping in our minds, we're about to die, and it's really painful. One technique that we can do is take our focus and look at the physical point of injury, of the pain, the physical pain of that disease. And let me explain how this could work. For example, in yoga, when a person does yoga, I'm going to sit right here for a second to show you an example. A person goes into a stretch like this. Oh, that feels good. But they want to go deeper and deeper and deeper. Oh, that feels really good. And they're staying here for a long time, and they want to go deeper. And then all of a sudden, there's stuck energy there. And it's like that tossing and turning in bed feeling, and you're like, oh, man. And most people, what they do is they come right out of it, and they don't want to deal with that. But the yogi and other people that are into yoga, they'll stay in there, and they'll take their focus and look at the stretch without any change whatsoever. And they're staring at the stretch like crazy. The focus is nonstop. And then the energy gets even more intense, and it gets really intense. Yogis are always crying because there's so much energy, and they're just like this silent thing staring at the stretch. And this huge envelope of energy just overpours them like being electrocuted, but they're still staring at this. And then all of a sudden, they cleared the energy. And now, they can go as deep into this stretch as they want, for as long as they want, with a smile. They cleared the stuck energy. Now the degenerative disease. You're sitting there. You're told you have 6 months to live. You're trying this new technique. I want to live. You're staring at the pain of this colon cancer right now with resistance, not like accepting this thing. You're like fighting here. We're staring at it with resistance, like as if you're looking at that yoga stretch. And you're staring, and then all of a sudden that stuck energy starts to move. And this is the root here. This is what we're looking for. And you're sitting there like, oh, this is so painful. You're like looping in your mind when you're trying to sleep, tossing and turning, but you're staring at this thing. I don't want to die. And then you just keep looking at it. The energy gets more intense. You're like, but I'm alive now. And then it gets more intense, and it's like, it feels like this electrocuting you, and you're looking at the physical point of energy, and this big envelope of energy just overpours you. And you're staring at it. In bed. For the first time, you can look at this physical point of injury with a smile and total acceptance. I'm alive now. I could do this and this and this. I am healing. I am healthy. And now you've cleared that energy. And this could take hours. It could take days. It's an ongoing process. And there's a little disclaimer here that we got to be careful of, because when you do this work, at some point, you're going to clean it if you really work hard on this. The trap here is once you clean it, this is something to file away for later. If you keep looking for it, it's kind of like you're inviting it back, if that makes sense. So it's a whole entire spiritual game realm here, chessboard and all that fun stuff. We got to figure out how to play the pieces. All right. So you guys, this focus work is critical for emotional, spiritual, and physical health. It is living your life. It's living in the moment. It is the search for God. And we can build up an incredible amount of focus and energy we could build up a lot of energy with this focus work. A lot of spiritual energy, it's true. Some people call it meditation. There's a difference between the two. There's just certain aspects we got to watch out for, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But we can build up an incredible amount of energy with this. But nobody's becoming enlightened. Why is that? A person can do all this focus work and meditation, and they build up all this energy, but there's like this wall right here, and they keep hitting it, and they come back, and it's like, boom, why aren't I becoming enlightened? Boom, what's going on here? What's going on here? It's a wall. But it really isn't a wall. It's a door. And only one can open this door. Some people call it the source. Some people call it the highest spirit of all. Some people call it God. Some people call it the creator of all living things. For the rest of this talk, I'm going to term it the creator. Only one can open this door. And then once that happens, the possibilities are endless. Now, let's talk about positive versus negative, good versus bad, good versus evil, whatever. We all know to do good, right? We're not going to go murder someone. We're not going to go rob a bank. We're not going to go steal stuff because these are all physical acts and we could get caught for them. We could go to jail. We could be labeled as a bad person. We're not going to do it. But there's an entire other aspect of evil that nobody sees what we're doing on the inside but you and, of course, one other. So you may be all about doing good. You might say that, but on the inside, you're all about fame, money, and greed. Let me give you another example. This is a really difficult one. Let's say you're a married person, and you're walking down the street, and the opposite sex, handsome guy or a hot girl, pays you the most amazing compliment. And all of a sudden, the initial body reaction, our hormones start to go. We get flustered. Whoa, that was pretty crazy. We have a choice at this moment in time. We could either do the focus work and kind of stop that in its track, like you would stop anger, or you can allow it and play with it and loop it in your mind over and over and over again to where you get those frills and those tingly vibrations. Oh, that feels so good. That feels so good. And you loop it and you loop it and you loop it. Guess what's happening right now? Your energy is being drained. That's your energy going those tingly vibrations. And you're being completely toyed with 100%. See, many of us want to be in bliss. Of course, we all do. But we mistake what bliss is. We mistake it for these frills of that, or the frills of greed, or the frills of fame, or the frills of power. But that's really our energy going away. And what happens is you build up a certain amount of energy, and then you play with the frills. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You play with the frills, and then what happens is you get hit down again. And then you have less energy and power in the spiritual world, and guess what's going to happen more often? You're going to be in your car miserable, sulking, because you can't do anything about it. But then soon you start to build up energy again, and guess what? Ironically, those compliments start happening again. And you're in this loop, ongoing. True bliss, what is true bliss? It's void of misery. When you do the spiritual work, and for the first time in your life, you experience peace, I'm not talking peace. I'm talking real peace. This is the best bliss you can possibly imagine. This is bliss. And this has nothing to do with religion. There are people that go to church and they're still fantasizing when they're married, about it, they're exalting themselves, they're doing all these things. And who's the determiner of evil? Man? If that were the case, I'd be one of the most wicked men in the world. I've had 3 petitions written against me. No, the Creator is. Let's talk about intent. This is critical. Someone could do the same exact act and have a bad intent, and someone can do the same exact act and have a good intent, and that makes it either a good or bad thing that they're doing. For example, my daughter, when she was 2, we were eating lunch, and the dogs were sitting there, and they were wagging their tail, and she took some of my food and threw it on the floor and gave it to the dogs. I was like, oh, that was my lunch. Why'd you give it to him? But I know her intent's good. She just wants to feed the dogs, and she didn't do an evil act here. But then let's say some guy is pissed off at me, and he comes up to me and takes my food and throws it on the floor and looks at me like this. Guess what? It's probably not the best intent. So it's really critical that we work on our intent. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the number one thing that we can do for spiritual growth. If you do this, you have the potential to go eons and eons beyond anything you've ever possibly imagined. We're talking decades, lifetimes. It's immeasurable. Immeasurable. And I'm going to give this to you right now. You guys ready? All right. Up to this moment, I did this, and this. I had no idea that you were watching every last thing that I did, and I had no idea that this was impacting my spiritual growth. I am sorry. I am sorry. From this moment forward, I am going to do this, and this. I am 100% certain of it, and nothing is going to stop me. Watch, you're going to see me. I'm going to do this, and this. I am so positive about it. Please consider me to move forward for spiritual growth in the most gentle and easy possible way. If you do this and perform it, you can literally go eons beyond that you've ever possibly thought was imaginable. Now, depending on who you are and what we've done in the past, some of us have a more difficult path than others. And even though your path may still be difficult, if you do this thing that I'm talking about, it can be a lot easier. We're talking decades, lifetimes, you can't even imagine. And for some of us who have an easier path, it could be literally as making this commitment and performing it, and then you're through. So now that we talked about the number one most important thing that we can do for spiritual growth, and you can get help with healing or whatever, I'm going to tell you some things that are absolutely unfathomable to our brains and minds. The first thing is, not all thoughts are our own. What? Not all thoughts are our own? How can this even be possible? Not all thoughts are our own. Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you're at home hanging out and you're not focusing too well. And all of a sudden you get this thought, desire, and urge to take the scissors and stab the dog. Now, obviously, we're not going to react upon that. Well, at least most of us won't. But we would not purposefully think of this thought. We wouldn't choose to do that. And these foreign thoughts that are floating around are not just a whisper in the ear. They are an entire 6-dimensional experience. You feel the urge. You feel it everywhere. Every sensory organ of your body. You feel it and hear it. And then this is why it's critical that we work on our intent. We think it's us almost most of the time. So all of a sudden, you're all about doing good and helping people, and all of a sudden, desire for fame, greed, and ego come in or whatever, and you're like, no, I'm all about good and helping people. This is working our intent and doing the focus work. And the reason for this resistance is to teach us to be better people so we can be more responsible. And here's a little trap that most people run into. You make this commitment, and then this foreign thought comes in. We feel like it's ourselves, and we think this bad thought, and all of a sudden we go into insecurity. Oh, I screwed up. I can't do this. I can't do this. And you're in this insecurity state of ow, 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 and you, oh, woe is me, insecurity, insecurity. Guess what's happening right now? This ow, your energy's being drained. If this happens, you got to be like, nope, catch yourself, focus, sorry, try again. Doing this, you got to be responsible for everything you vibrate. That's what this focus work and spiritual work is. And I said this is the number one thing for spiritual growth. However, this focus work is also critically important. It is doing the work. Let me give you an example. I gave an example earlier of how we're all driving in our car. We've all had this incident, and we're just sitting there miserable. Oh, life sucks. Nobody's around. But just this morning, you were driving, you were listening to Beyonce, you were dancing, having a good time. But right now, you're just miserable. You're like looking for that Beyonce song. That Beyonce song comes on, and you're still miserable. Nothing works. You just turn off the radio. We've all been here. We've all done that, and that's it. We're just like, life sucks. Next time this happens, celebrate. Because right now, you have an opportunity to prove yourself. Let me give you an example. You know, sometimes when you're hanging out, and all of a sudden this hazy cloud comes over you, and it kind of just like magnetizes you and brings you into this state staring at the wall of this, you're just like stuck there, and if someone were to look at you, you'd look like a dead corpse. We don't want to be in this state because our energy is being drained. And it feels so difficult to get out of that. It's like this magnetic resistance, and we've been obeying it for so long, we don't even realize we do have the option to get out of that. And we've got to do the spiritual work to get out of it because we don't want to lose our spiritual energy and get our energy drained. So you're sitting there driving, and all of a sudden this hazy fog thing comes over you, and it brings your focus and intention into this state of misery as you're driving. You're stuck here. You don't think you could disobey it because you've been obeying it for all these years. And what we're doing is we're looping in our mind, how can we make our life better? How can we make our life better? And you're just sitting here sulking. And no mind or logical thing can take away the ow that you're experiencing, because the ow is not the mind. It's a feeling that is tricking you into going into your mind. So what happens is you do the focus work, and then you say no, and you're like staring now, and now you're feeling the out, and you're just like, no, now you're going against this magnetism. And you're like, no, I don't accept this. And now you're sitting here, and it's intense. It's uncomfortable because we've never experienced this before. And remember, you want more spiritual energy, we got to understand the good and the bad. And I don't agree with this. And you're just sitting there fighting in your car. Misery is not misery anymore. It's a time to prove to yourself. And you're fighting. You feel like you're getting electrocuted. And then finally, it just like stops. And you're like, whoa. When you're in that misery state in your mind, your energy is being drained. And when you're up here, during the battle, energy is not being drained. It's about who's getting the energy, you or them. So when you get up to here, you're not subject to that energy drain anymore. And then you're sitting there driving, focusing, and you kind of lose focus. And all of a sudden, this hazy energy comes over you again. You're like, no! And this is the spiritual work. And this focus work is critical. Now let's talk about the sixth sense. Many of us think the sixth sense, oh, I wish I had the sixth sense. I don't experience that. That's just like crazy out of my world. However, every one of us experiences the sixth sense all the time. We just choose to ignore it. What is the sixth sense? Well, we all know about the five senses, right? Touch, taste, smell, hearing, and sight. And we're the one who experiences everything, those things, right? But there are things beyond that we experience, beyond those five senses. And anything that we experience beyond those five senses is the sixth sense. This is the realm we're trying to look at. So now let me give you an example. Let's say you're at this party, you're hanging out, and all of a sudden you see that person over there, and you're like, oh no. When you talk to this person at a party, you feel an ow. It's uncomfortable. You don't like talking to that person. And if they had the ability, they'd talk to you all night long, but you don't want that ow. You know, we like talking to people, but this is like, it's uncomfortable. And you turn your head, and all of a sudden you get eye contact with them. You're like, oh no, here they're coming. And you're sitting there at this party, and now they're here, and they're speaking. You're not hearing the words, but you hear wah, 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 wah. And you're sitting there in your mind, sixth sense, what can I do to, in the most polite way, get away from this person as soon as possible? And so all of a sudden, you feel this pain down here, and with your focus and attention, you're looking down here, and then it moves here, you're moving here, and you don't even realize you're doing this because it's just another reflex, like going into the magnetism that you've been doing for eons to protect yourself. And you're like doing this thing, and then something gets in, and you're like, every one of these moves that you do, you're moving your spiritual body that is not seen by the human eye. And when we start to do this focus work, in all instances, as much as possible, this realm starts to open up to you. Let me give you another example. Let's say you're walking outside all by yourself. Nobody else is around but you, and everything's really calm and chill, right? But then as someone else comes into your eyesight, all of a sudden that calm reality of yours starts to shift. It's uncomfortable now. What, you think this is you? Before you, a second ago, you were just fine. There's an entire six-dimensional experience that happens. Maybe the girl thinks this guy's cute and she's like attracting him. Or maybe she thinks he's creepy and he's like staring at her like, ah. Or maybe it's an old man and it's a pleasant feeling. Whatever it is, there's a whole other reality going on here that we choose to ignore. And if we start to do this focus work, it begins to open up to us. And one of the key things that we could do in all instances is to stay in our own reality and keep focus and keep everything in. Because if we start playing with other people's realities, you're in their reality and that's their domain. Guess what? You can get bitten. We don't want that. All right. So now I was saying there's like different things of meditation focus we got to like watch out for, different components. And this focus work is incredibly powerful, or you can even call it meditation. And when you do this focus work, it's like you create this resistance, like a boundary, keeping things out. There's one dangerous aspect that's taught a lot of the time, which is surrender. So let's say you're in your car driving. Do you want to be surrendering to that misery? Do you want to be surrendering to these frills of greed, these frills of things that are taking your energy away? So meditation with the component of focus, this is an incredible thing. What's our purpose here? To serve? To serve who? Man? If that were the case, imagine one of those people who walks all over your boundary. You serve them 100% with all your heart and soul. You might get taken advantage of there. No. We serve the Creator. Let's talk about the complainer real quick. We all complain. Don't get me wrong. I have this itch or that itch, or this is happening to me today. But then there's the complainer who complains all day long. You come up to them and they're like, oh, my life sucks. This is what happened to me today, and this would happen, and it's never ending. You know what I'm talking about? And if you feel, it's almost uncomfortable to be around them because it's like this, oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me. Who are they complaining to? You? Did you do this to them? Their mom? Did they do this? No. They're complaining to, they're pretty much saying, you know what? I'm ungrateful. I don't like what you've given me and allotted me. I don't appreciate my life. And this could be a dangerous thing. Now, I don't call the shots, don't get me wrong, but he might be like looking at this frequency, they're always complaining. If I were to give them more, it's not going to change their frequency. They're going to still complain. But maybe if we take something away, that will shift them. You've heard of many people who have hit rock bottom and they made a completely different change. And it was the best thing that happened to them. Let's talk about the conspiracy guy. Don't get me wrong. We all like a little bit of conspiracy. For example, aliens or Obama's wife being a man or whatever it is. Look it up online if you want. But then there's the conspiracy guy who, is like the complainer, just talks about conspiracy. If you were at the party, he would talk to you for 5 hours straight, saying, rah, rah, it's a feeling for you to feel 9/11, da, 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 da. If you feel this, rah, 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 that's another ow frequency. And it's almost like you don't want to be around it because you don't want to be subject to that misery. What is this person pretty much saying? You know what? I don't think there's a reason for everything you do. And quite frankly, I don't like what you've done here, and I think I could do a better job. Big mistake. But on the flip side, There are all of these Monsanto and GMO fighters fighting them and winning the battle. And it makes no logical sense. These people fighting for vaccines, they make no money, they're poor. Like, why are they doing this? A corporation would look at them and say, are you crazy? They're fulfilled in some way. What is it? Because they're in service to the Creator. And a lot of them don't realize why they're fulfilled. You can either be consciously serving the Creator or unconsciously. Me personally, I like to choose consciously whenever I possibly can. And many people are like, I want to be of service. Like, I want to do something with my life. The number one thing that we can do of service is immediately start doing this focus work and fixing our inner beings. And then you start to change others. Doing this spiritual work is working for the Creator. For example, maybe you have a child, you have authority over this child. And you're doing this focus work all the time. Instead of them feeling these bad vibrations that they're probably going to vibrate for the rest of their life, you're sitting there and you're doing the focus work, and then all of a sudden this sex thing comes in or greed thing comes in, and you clean it, and then you didn't even realize this, but this might have been your child that you just did that for, and they learn all of these things. It might have been them. And then once you start to do this heavily in service, all of a sudden you might be gifted more to where you have a greater impact on more people. Let's talk about the chip on the shoulder. We've all been in relationships, or we have a family member, and we get angry because they did something wrong to us. And we've got this chip on our shoulder. We're the victim. We've got this chip on our shoulder. Unless they bow down and apologize, this chip on the shoulder is not going anywhere, and it's pain and suffering. We don't want to be here, but we feel like we need to be. If you thought the sex attraction thing was bad, now here's pride. What is happening right now is your energy is being drained. And it's very difficult to get out of. But first we identify that we're in it, and then we got to figure it out. A little technique you could do, I wouldn't always rely on techniques, is you be the one to say sorry. You got angry, and you're directing that energy towards them. Who cares about the reasoning? The reasons don't matter. Reasons can be a battle forever. There's no logical conclusion end to them. Another thing that happens is we find ourselves, it's common, we're human beings. We find ourselves going down a tunnel of thoughts, hating on a person or thinking about this, worrying, suffering in that misery state. And what we want to do is when we find ourselves in here, be like, no, and get out and choose a better state to be in. For example, let's say you're a woman and you're cleaning the house and you're starving, you only got 3 hours sleep, and you go to the refrigerator, you are so excited because you're starving, and you open the door, and the food that you had this morning was gone. You were planning on eating this. Your husband took it. You are now pissed off. You're cleaning the house, angry. This is the state you're choosing. And all of a sudden, the child is sitting there watching you clean the house, and they're like, I don't like that feeling. It's like, I don't want to be around that, but, you're the mom or whatever. That's what they're going to vibrate in the future. So, let's say you're like, change your state, say no to that state of grrr, and be like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to be done in 4 hours. I'm going to be able to sleep for 12 hours tomorrow. This is awesome. I'm going to be able to go get my food. I am so excited about this. And then all of a sudden your husband, and all of a sudden like everything is a game. And you're cleaning up, trying to get everything done as soon as possible. And now your child is joining in and having fun. This is life. Oh, that's awesome. And then your husband comes home and he was thinking about you and he brought you this huge meal that was better than the salad that you had in there. Right? All right. We're going to go a little bit. How much time we got here? What time is it? 38 minutes. Sweet. I know it's long, guys. Normally we take a break and all that other stuff, but we got to keep hitting this through. We're almost done. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this in a second, but I want to talk about how the raw food diet or any improved diet can be a powerful tool for spiritual growth. And let me give you an example. Myself, when I went 100% raw, someone handed me this book, Become Younger by Dr. Norman Walker. It's another one by this. I read this book overnight, one night, and it told me about processed starches, animal protein, and all these things and what it was doing to my body. That next day, I went 100% raw and never turned back. And guess what happened? I felt like crap. I was working at MTV Networks in New York City. I was running back and forth to the bathroom nonstop. I had zits all over my face. My nose was running. I was in complete misery. I lost all my friends and family because I think I'm a crazy raw food eater, but I didn't care. This is all that mattered to me. And I'm sitting there miserable. And the one guy who gave me the book, his brother happened to be a colon therapist, and I went and got a colonic and then took all this waste out and felt incredible. It's that combination we're talking about, right? And all of a sudden, my zits went away. I wasn't going to the bathroom nonstop all day long. My nose stopped running. It was incredible just from doing this colonic. But then 2 weeks later, my nose started to run again. I was running back and forth to the bathroom nonstop, and I started getting zits on my face again. So what I did was I got another colonic. And me personally, I did get addicted to them for a while. And I did it every 10 days for literally the first 8 months of being raw. And so here I was, experiencing life in a whole new way. It was like I felt so good. I thought for happiness you needed to be on a raw food diet, which is absolutely nonsense, which I learned a little bit later. It's like one of those raw food new guys. Oh, raw food, you have to do this to be happy. It's bullshit. Sorry. So that, because then it's like capped off. That becomes your everyday. You can't go any further with that than raw food. You get stuck there. So then it's like, okay, then you kind of like, I want to feel better now, and then you, oh, I don't feel good anymore, even though you feel the same, and you start messing around, going back and forth, and then you're a mess. But regardless, so here I was, after about 8 months of being raw. The colon hydrotherapists were my only friends now because everybody else thought I was crazy. I heard them talking about a psyllium bentonite cleanse. A psyllium bentonite cleanse. And they're like, oh, I can't stand psyllium bentonite. When you take one of those concoctions, even just like a teaspoon of it, what comes out of you is like that. And, you feel it in your colon, it doesn't feel well. And I hear them talking about this Bernard Jensen cleanse, which is really extreme. And they're like, oh, I would never do that. And I'm like, what is it, the extremist? Tell me, I want to do it right now. And what it is you take psyllium and bentonite 5 times a day for 7 days, and you eat no food. You could only drink vegetable juices in between it. And what comes out of you every day is 5 of these bad boys. And it supposedly scrapes the mucoid plaque from your small intestines. And additionally, you have to do a colonic or a Kalima board, heavy, deep enemas, in the morning and evening of every day this cleanse. It's intense, man, because you got to keep the stuff moving out, or it won't be as extreme and good. My colon therapist could not believe what was pouring out of me. They were just like, this black stuff. I'm like the experimentation dummy. They've never seen anything like this before. And I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness. It was like, I was just like in the zone of like, I'm getting through this. And on the very last day of this, keep in mind, I was 20-something. I was young. I was drinking vegetable juices nonstop for these 8 months. I was on a 100% raw food diet for 8 months, did colonics every 10 days. My body was ready for this. I didn't cheat whatsoever. When I did that cleanse and finished it off and got the rest of that psyllium bentonite out of me, the very last colonic, something happened to me for the very first time that I've never experienced before in my life. I started to get a vibration right here, and I had no idea what it was. It was like these 2 magnets opposing each other, and it was like this bliss, and I'm like, I don't ever want this to go. I don't ever want this to go. And it's been there ever since that day. It's almost like the vision I get is like a tiger looking over a mountain and just complete awareness going like this. I was like, things started happening like I've never experienced before. Like, I felt like I was floating through New York City with no mucus in my lungs. It was just unbelievable. And so I went to the spiritual store, the bookstore, and I started reading spiritual books because I wanted to understand more. Everybody else thought I was crazy when I was talking about this magnet feeling in my brain, and they thought I was nutso. So what happened was I went to the bookstore, and I started reading spiritual books, and I started reading all these different authors, and I started learning about meditation and chakras, and I'm like, wait a minute, this must be the third eye chakra. So I go to my brother, I'm like, this is the third eye chakra I was talking about. Big mistake. Won't do that again. Other things started happening. Whenever I would meditate, I would notice that this vibration would get stronger. And then sometimes I'd be staring at my mom's house, and I would be looking at the wall, and I would start seeing these things, or like I was looking at the sky, and I would see like energy or something, and or get a glimpse of this hologram. This is like what meditators do. It's a mistake because I learned the hard way. Those are those frills we shouldn't be really playing with again, and our energy gets drained. I took meditation so hardcore that I actually started falling asleep aware. I would try to do it before I went to bed, and I would feel myself almost like dying or something. It was crazy. And then I would just leave my body through my third eye, and then I'd be flying. It felt like wind going on my face. It was like doing astral projection. And this is another thing you don't want to be playing with because your energy gets completely drained every time you do that. And I was doing that for years in this loop. But regardless, all these different things started happening to me just from doing a raw food diet and nothing else, and this whole entire procedure that I'm talking about. What is the third eye? Everybody has it. It's part of our spiritual body. The reason why we don't access it is because it is a result of building up energy and filling up our entire spiritual body with energy to where we're overflowing. And this is like the cosmic antenna to where you're overflowing through here. And then you start to feel it. Why don't we ever get there? It's because we're always allowing our energy to drain. Maybe we're playing with those frills. Maybe we're allowing people to walk all over our boundaries. Maybe we're always in insecurity. Maybe we're that complainer. Maybe we're the conspiracy guy. Anything that's not that peace state, is we want to reach that peace state. So, the thing for spiritual growth, I could have just said this all in one sentence at the beginning, but it wouldn't have made much sense. Make this commitment, perform this commitment, do the focus work, not allow our energy to get drained, and beg on your hands and knees to get. And then these things can start opening to us. Now, let's wrap it all the way back around to this placebo effect. So here you are at the hospital, and you're told you have 6 months to live. Or you have this thyroid issue because your numbers on a piece of paper were wrong. What happens? You go into a state of panic, and you declare that you have this issue. And in shamanistic traditions, they state that if there's an opening, foreign entities can attach to certain things that you allow an opening to. They even go as far in shamanistic traditions that cancer is seriously like this black spirit that kind of overcomes a person. So it's critical to do the spiritual work, and if we get nailed with a spiritual attack like that, no, I don't accept that. I'm going to get 100 doctors' opinions, or I'm going to try this method at home on my own. I do not have a thyroid issue. That is BS. So yeah. Now, let's talk about, many of us think that we actually see what's in front of us. You're looking at me right now. You're like, oh, wait, there's Matt. He's in this white shirt with black pants. I see him. What is he talking about? Do you really see me? Let me give you an example. Remember Pixar came out with their first movie of its kind called Toy Story? Now all cartoons are like that, but the first time we saw that, we were watching this cartoon, and we were tripping out on this. It was like, look at that baby with the rattle. Oh my goodness, it's like three-dimensional. How do they do this? Now, if you actually saw everything that was actually in front of you right now, forget that. This is like a psychedelic world. Whoa. In this movie screen right here, I've got hands and arms, and it's in space, and I could feel things. Oh my God, look at that ring. There's shiny things on it. Oh my God, look at these creases. Oh, the floor is tripping me out. Look at it. It's going like blah, 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 blah. We are living in a psychedelic world. And if you make this commitment that we talked about earlier, perform this commitment, you may be gifted more life to where you could be of more service, and then you get to experience more of this world, which is more life. And that, it does not get better than that. So to wrap it all up, guys, we talked about the physical work, how to do this. You are empowered now. You have everything at your fingertips in order to heal from degenerative disease on a spiritual and physical level. Here, right here, it's here. If you eliminate everything from your diet but what's on this list, congratulations, you did it. You are on a whole foods diet. God willing, you're going to be pharmaceutical drug-free, degenerative disease-free, all that junk-free. We want to nourish ourselves with vegetable juices, and we want to do the spiritual work through focus and making that commitment that we talked about, which is the number one thing that a person can do for spiritual growth.